The first scream came before sunrise. A little African girl, no older than 6, ran barefoot across the dusty road, her tiny feet bleeding from sharp stones.
Daddy.
Please don't let them take me. Behind her, a black luxury SUV waited with its engine running. A wealthy couple stood beside it, their faces filled with sorrow. In a man's hand was a thick envelope containing $500, the amount that would change 3 lives forever. The girl's father stood frozen. His hands trembled. His lips quivered. Then, with tears streaming down his face, he slowly pulled his daughter into one last embrace. "I'm sorry, my little queen." The child cried harder. "I don't want money. I only want you." 20 years later, every television station in Africa interrupted its regular programming. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the youngest self-made billionaire in African history. A confident young woman stepped onto the stage as thousands stood and applauded. The old farmer cleaning tables inside a roadside cafe dropped the tray from his hands. His heart nearly stopped. Those eyes, he would recognize them anywhere. It was his daughter, the little girl he had let go for $500. And for the first time in 20 years, she was coming home. 20 years earlier, the village of Mawimbi rested between golden hills and endless grasslands. Children once played beside the river while farmers harvested enough crops to feed every family. But those days had disappeared. The rain stopped coming. The river became a thin stream. The fields cracked beneath the burning sun. One by one, families left the village searching for food. Only those with nowhere else to go remained. Among them lived Kofi, a 35-year-old widower, and his 6-year-old daughter, Alma. Their house was barely standing. The roof leaked whenever rain came. The walls leaned dangerously after every storm. Yet every evening, laughter still escaped through the broken windows. Because Alma could make happiness from almost nothing. "Daddy." She ran toward Kofi carrying a crown woven from dry grass. "I made this for you." Kofi laughed. "A king wearing grass?"
No.
She carefully placed it on his head. "A father who never gives up." He smiled, although his stomach had been empty for 2 days. "And where is your crown?" Alma picked up another tiny circle of grass and placed it on her own head. "I'm your little queen." Kofi gently kissed her forehead. "My beautiful queen." She hugged him tightly. "When I become rich, I'll build you the biggest house in Africa." "You don't have to." "I do."
Why?
"So you'll never worry again." Kofi looked away before she could see the tears filling his eyes. She was only 6 years old, yet all she dreamed about was making his life easier. Every morning before sunrise, Kofi walked nearly 10 kilometers looking for work. Sometimes he carried bricks. Sometimes he chopped wood. Sometimes he spent the entire day searching and earned nothing at all. Still, every evening he returned home smiling. "Did you eat today, Daddy?" Alma asked. "Of course."
It was always a lie.
The last meal usually belonged to Alma. She never knew that while she slept, her father drank water just to silence the hunger inside his stomach. One afternoon, they visited the small village market. Alma stopped in front of an old wooden table covered with second-hand books. Her eyes sparkled.
"Daddy."
She picked up a worn reading book with missing pages. "Can I learn these words one day?" Kofi opened his pocket. 3 small coins. Not enough. The old woman selling the books noticed his expression. "It's only $5. $5. To most people, it meant almost nothing. To Kofi, it was impossible. He gently returned the book. "Another day." Alma smiled. "That's okay." She squeezed his hand. "You already teach me everything important. What do I teach you?" "To be kind. And to never stop smiling." Kofi smiled, but inside, something broke. That night a violent wind swept across the village. The roof of their hut collapsed on one side. Rain poured through the opening. Alma laughed as they moved the bed away from the water. "It's like sleeping under the stars." Kofi forced himself to laugh with her. She always found joy where others found misery. The following morning, 3 debt collectors arrived. They didn't knock. They kicked open the door. "You owe us." "I just need another month." Kofi pleaded. You've said that before. One man grabbed the family's only cooking pot. Another carried away their blankets. The third looked around the nearly empty house and laughed. So this is all you own? Kofi lowered his head. I'll pay. With what? Silence. The leader leaned close. If you don't have money by tomorrow? He pointed toward Alma, who stood frightened behind her father. Someone else will decide your future. The men left laughing. Alma slowly walked toward Kofi.
Daddy.
Are they bad people? He knelt and hugged her. They're just people who forgot how to be kind. That evening, the village chief arrived with unexpected visitors. A sleek black SUV rolled into the dusty village, turning every head. Children chased after it. No one had ever seen such wealth. A well-dressed couple stepped out. The man introduced himself first. My name is Samuel. The woman smiled gently. I'm Grace. Unlike the debt collectors, there was kindness in their eyes. Grace looked toward Alma, who was quietly drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick. She's beautiful. Kofi immediately stepped in front of his daughter. What do you want? Samuel spoke softly. We heard about your family. We're not here to hurt you. Grace took a slow breath. We lost our only child 6 years ago. Her voice trembled. Every birthday, every Christmas, our home feels empty. Kofi remained silent. Samuel carefully placed an envelope on the table. When Kofi opened it, his eyes widened. Crisp American dollar bills. $500. More money than he had seen in his entire life. Samuel looked directly into Kofi's eyes. We would like to adopt Alma. The world seemed to stop. The wind disappeared. Even the birds fell silent. Kofi slowly closed the envelope and pushed it back across the table.
No. His voice was calm.
But his hands shook violently. Samuel nodded respectfully. I understand. Grace stood to leave. Before reaching the door, she quietly turned back. Can I ask you one question?
Kofi said nothing.
If you keep Alma, she glanced toward the little girl smiling outside. Can you promise she'll never know hunger again? Kofi opened his mouth, but no words came. For the first time in his life, love alone was no longer enough. And deep inside, he felt the terrifying weight of a decision that no father should ever have to make. The envelope stayed on the table all night. Kofi stared at it as though it were a curse. $500. To a wealthy family, it was a small amount. To him, it meant food for months, a new roof over his home, and enough money to clear every debt. But it also meant something else. The empty bed where Alma slept. Outside, the wind howled through the broken walls of the hut. Inside, Alma lay asleep, hugging the cloth doll her mother had sewn before she died. Kofi walked over and gently brushed the hair from her face. She smiled in her sleep. Mama? She whispered. His heart shattered. I promised your mother I'd protect you, he murmured. How can I keep that promise if I can't even feed you? Before dawn, Kofi made his decision.
Not because he wanted to.
Because he believed it was the only way Alma would survive. When Samuel and Grace returned, Kofi was waiting outside the hut. His eyes were swollen from crying. Samuel stepped forward. You don't have to do this. Kofi looked toward Alma, who was chasing butterflies in the tall grass. I know, but if she stays with me, he swallowed hard. She may not live long enough to have a future. Grace began to cry. We will love her as our own. You must promise me something. Anything. You'll never tell her I was a bad father. Samuel nodded. I promise. And let her go to school. I promise. And every year on her birthday? Kofi's voice broke. Tell her someone somewhere is praying for her. Samuel reached out his hand. Instead of shaking it, Kofi collapsed into tears. Alma ran toward them, smiling. Daddy, who are these people again? Kofi knelt in front of her. My little queen, remember how you always wanted to go to school? She nodded excitedly. And remember how you wanted books? Yes. And new clothes? Yes. He smiled through tears. These wonderful people can give you all those things. Alma frowned. What about you? I'll always be with you. She looked around. But where? Kofi couldn't answer. Grace slowly reached for Alma's hand. "We'd like you to come live with us." The little girl's smile disappeared. "For how long?" Kofi lowered his head. "A long time." Alma stepped backward.
No.
She grabbed her father's shirt tightly. "I'm staying here." Samuel looked away, unable to watch. Grace wiped tears from her face. Kofi hugged Alma tighter than ever before. "If love could fill an empty stomach," he whispered, "I'd never let you go." Alma didn't understand. She simply cried harder. "Daddy, I don't want a big house. I don't want new clothes. I only want you." The words pierced Kofi's soul. But he knew if he changed his mind now, she might never have another chance at life. With trembling hands, he gently released her fingers from his shirt. Grace carried the sobbing child toward the waiting SUV. Alma screamed, "Daddy!" The entire village fell silent. Even the debt collectors who had mocked Kofi the day before lowered their heads. As the SUV disappeared in a cloud of red dust, Alma pressed her tiny hand against the rear window. Kofi stood motionless. He raised his hand one last time. Then he fell to his knees. For weeks, Kofi could not bring himself to enter Alma's empty room. Her tiny sandals still rested beside the bed. Her little wooden cup sat on the table. Her unfinished drawing of a large house remained scratched into the dirt outside. The village whispered behind his back. He sold his own daughter. What kind of father does that? No one knew the truth. No one knew he had used almost every dollar to pay his debts, repair the village well, and buy food for struggling neighbors. He kept almost nothing for himself. Every night, he walked to the hill overlooking the road. Every night, he whispered the same prayer. Please let her be happy. Meanwhile, Alma's new life felt like another world. Samuel and Grace's home in the city was enormous. Soft beds, electric lights, books everywhere. Her own bedroom, a wardrobe filled with clothes. Yet none of it made her smile. She refused to eat. She refused to play. Every night, she cried herself to sleep. One evening, Grace found her sitting beside the bedroom window. What are you looking at? The road. Why? So Daddy can find me. Grace knelt beside her. He loves you very much. Then why did he leave me? Grace had no answer. She simply hugged the little girl as they both cried. Months passed. Alma slowly began attending school. She was quiet. She rarely spoke. Other children laughed at her village accent and old-fashioned clothes. One boy mocked her. Your real parents didn't even want you. The classroom fell silent. Alma clenched her fists but said nothing. Instead, she walked to the library. Books became her safest place. She read every story she could find. Science, history, business, mathematics. The school librarians soon noticed something remarkable. At just 8 years old, Alma could solve problems that older students struggled to understand. You're extraordinary, the librarian told her. Alma smiled politely. I'm just trying to make my daddy proud. Years passed. By the age of 15, Alma had won national science competitions. At 17, she earned a scholarship to one of Africa's most prestigious universities. At 19, while many students dreamed of getting jobs, Alma dreamed of creating them. She invented a low-cost solar-powered water purification system designed for remote villages suffering from drought, places just like Mwimbi. Investors laughed at first. No one will buy this. You're too young. You don't know business. Alma remembered her father's words. Never stop smiling. Instead of giving up, she worked day and night. She improved her designs. She knocked on hundreds of doors. Most were slammed in her face. But one investor finally believed in her. Within 3 years, her company was supplying clean water systems across multiple African countries. By 24, her business was worth hundreds of millions. By 26, it crossed $1 billion. Television stations called her the youngest self-made billionaire in Africa. During her first live international interview, the host smiled. You've achieved everything. Is there anyone you'd like to thank? Alma looked into the camera. Her voice trembled. Yes. My father. The audience applauded. She continued. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's alive. But if he's watching, she paused, fighting back tears. I want him to know I never stopped loving him. Thousands of kilometers away, inside a small roadside cafe, an old farmer looked up at the television. The cup slipped from his trembling hands. It shattered across the floor. His eyes filled with tears. My little queen, he whispered. It's you. And for the first time in 20 years, hope returned to Kofi's heart. The cafe fell silent. Customers stared as the old man dropped to his knees in front of the television. On the screen, the interviewer asked one final question. What is the first thing you would do if you found your father today? Alma smiled through tears. I would hug him. I wouldn't ask him why he let me go. I would thank him, because if he made that choice to save my life, I know it must have broken his heart first. Kofi covered his face and wept. For 20 years, he had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways. He thought she would hate him. He thought she would call him a monster. Instead, she thanked him. The interviews spread across the world. News stations replayed it for days. People praised the billionaire who had never forgotten the father she had lost. Samuel and Grace finally told Alma the truth they had carried for 2 decades. They showed her the worn envelope that had once held the $500. Inside was a folded letter. We promised your father we would give this to you when you were old enough to understand. Alma carefully unfolded the fragile paper. The handwriting was rough and uneven. My little queen, if you are reading this, it means you are old enough to know the truth. I did not let you go because I stopped loving you. I let you go because I loved you more than I loved myself. Every father dreams of giving his child a better life. I had nothing left to give except the chance to leave me. If one day you hate me, I will understand. But please never believe that a single sunrise passed without me praying for you. You have always been the greatest blessing of my life. Love forever. Your daddy. The letter slipped from Alma's hands. She burst into tears. All those years, she had believed she had been abandoned. Now she understood. Her father hadn't sold her. He had sacrificed everything he loved so she could survive. She turned to Samuel and Grace. We're going home. 3 days later, a convoy of black SUVs entered the dusty roads leading to Mawimbi. Behind them came trucks loaded with building materials, medical equipment, and water tanks. The villagers gathered in confusion. Some recognized the elegant young woman stepping from the lead vehicle. It can't be. That's Alma, the little girl. Word spread quickly. The billionaire has returned. Kofi wasn't there. He still worked at the roadside cafe several kilometers away. He had convinced himself she deserved a better reunion than an old man in worn-out clothes.
So he stayed away.
Alma walked slowly through the village. The old baobab tree still stood. The tiny market still sold second-hand books. The broken hut where she had been born leaned even more than before. She stepped inside. Everything was empty, except for one thing. On the dusty wall hung a tiny crown woven from dry grass. Her eyes filled with tears. She remembered. A father who never gives up. The village chief approached quietly. He never took it down. Every year on your birthday, he cleaned this house. He said one day his little queen might come home. Alma covered her mouth as she cried. Where is he? Meanwhile, Kofi was sweeping the cafe floor when a convoy stopped outside. Samuel stepped out first. Kofi froze. Samuel smiled gently. She's here. Kofi's legs became weak. I can't. What if she hates me? Samuel placed a hand on his shoulder. Read her eyes before you judge her heart. With trembling hands, Kofi climbed into the vehicle. The journey back to Mawimbi felt longer than 20 years. As they approached the village, he saw hundreds of people gathered near his old hut. At the center stood a young woman in a white dress. She turned. For a moment, neither of them moved. The years disappeared. Kofi still saw the little girl with the grass crown. Alma still saw the father, who carried her on his shoulders. Daddy. The single word broke him. He fell to his knees. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I failed you. Alma ran across the dusty road. She threw her arms around him. No. You saved me. Kofi looked at her in disbelief. I know everything. I read your letter. You didn't sell me. You gave away your own happiness, so I could have a future. Father and daughter held each other as the entire village watched in tears. Even the people who had judged Kofi lowered their heads in shame. One of the old debt collectors stepped forward. We called you a terrible father. We were wrong. Kofi simply smiled. My daughter came home. That's all that matters. The following week, Amma announced a surprise. Standing in the village square, she addressed everyone. This village taught me my first lessons about love. It also taught me how painful poverty can be. I can't change the past, but together, we can change the future. Within months, construction began. A modern school replaced the abandoned classrooms. A hospital opened, where there had once been only a small clinic. Solar-powered water systems brought clean drinking water to every home. A technology training center gave young people opportunities their parents had never imagined. At the entrance of the village stood a stone monument. It didn't bear Amma's name. Instead, it read, "To every parent who sacrifices everything so their children can dream." Years later, as children laughed outside the new school, Kofi sat beneath the old baobab tree with Amma beside him. Do you remember your promise? He asked. She smiled. Which one? You said you'd build me the biggest house in Africa. Amma laughed softly. I changed my mind. Oh, I built a home for an entire village instead. Kofi looked across the school, the hospital, the flowing clean water, and the children running freely. A peaceful smile spread across his face. You kept your promise, my little queen. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he closed his eyes with gratitude. He had once believed that losing his daughter was the greatest tragedy of his life. Instead, it had become the greatest act of love he would ever make. And in the end, that love came home.